Okay, I'm back.
Welcome back. Okay, well, it looks like we've got a couple of viewers.
Awesome.
Well, how do you want to start? Should we talk a little bit about the project, or?
Sure. I assume we're live now, or
Yep. Yes, we are
okay,
live right now.
okay. Hi, everyone. Yeah, this is a project that I started up recently. I've been keeping track of Scorpion Engine, of course, and was just getting more and more impressed not only with what's possible, but just Eric's amazing development speed and just how quickly he's adding new features and functionality. And once he got such amazing background parallax tricks supported, and then one of the things I love is the ability to do translucent effects on the Amiga with some very careful palette handling, which Eric is demonstrating right now on screen. That basically was the straw that broke the camel's back in a good way for me. I just was like, okay, I've got to actually try using Scorpion Engine. And I've always been a kind of obsessive optimizer. I love learning about hardware constraints and trying to figure out how to overcome them or create the illusion that those constraints don't exist, how to put best use to color limitations and all of those things. So I really wanted to see not only just how usable Scorpion Engine was from myself, from my own experience, but to see if I could actually make a great looking and great playing game that would run on OCS and ECS Amigas, since obviously it's much easier to just default to AGA, which there's no problem with that, and I would love to make some AGA versions and games someday. But I just love that extra challenge, and I figure the more a couple of users like me push for that optimizing, the more it encourages optimization tricks, and for Eric himself to keep pushing that envelope and optimizing Scorpion Engine even more, which, like I said, I am just ever impressed with how quickly and how profoundly he keeps improving Scorpion Engine. So I was a big fan before I started using Scorpion Engine, and I'm an even bigger fan now. And so this game basically is where we've gotten so far. Eric really started helping me out. We've done several videos together, which I believe you can find on his YouTube channel. Is that right, Eric?
Yeah. Yep. So uh, on um, on the YouTube channel, on my YouTube channel, I usually post these videos and other videos about Scorpion Engine projects.
Yep. So, and yeah, if you want to demonstrate some of the gameplay features, the two newest ones that we've added is if you press downward, you can block. And if you press either of the down angles while you're blocking, you can immediately change direction. So you should be able to turn around in case you've got a shot or an enemy coming behind you.
Yep.
And then the other thing is while you're blocking, if you press the jump button instead of jumping up in the air, you'll do a quick evasive slide maneuver.
Oops.
Oh, the wrong button. There,
There we go.
there you go. Yep. And nice. So you can see it's got some dust particle effects going while you slide. And it's actually swapping which player actor it's using. So the collision box is actually smaller and lower while you're sliding. So it can be a very effective evasive maneuver. Um, and those are the two big features. So if you go forward a little more, there's going to be that big robot that shoots at you. And you could show off now that if you hold down to block,
Oops.
yeah, so you can attack to parry the shot back, but if you hold down to block, you could see you're holding your sword at an angle. Well, not you, but the player character is. and it actually deflects shots. So shots coming from in front of you get deflected upwards, but you'll see later on in the level something that shoots straight down at you, the shot will get deflected forward. And you can actually deflect shots at other enemies and hit them that way. So that's going to be a really big part of some really fun gameplay in future levels, especially when we get that far. So if you want, you can go ahead and try using attack now to repel the shots. And it should take 2 or 3, one more, I think, to destroy the enemy. There you
Whoops.
go. And now...
Now, I think I think there's an issue with the frame rate because I'm simultaneously streaming on Discord as well as streaming on Twitch.
All right, why don't you? I did notice the game was running slow, so why don't you stop screen sharing for me, and I'll just tune into the stream.
So give me just 1 minute. I'm just going to see if I can.
It's no problem for me to just tune into the stream. Hopefully, there's not a big delay for me. All right, well...
Okay, hopefully that's better now. I'll just... Okay, can everyone on the stream hear us? Hear us both?
Well, I can hear you so far. I'm still waiting for an ad to finish. Okay, now I can see the stream.
Yep.
But I don't see anyone on the chat yet. I suppose I could just listen in on the stream for a second. Okay, yep, I can hear myself.
Yep.
When
Excellent.
I turn the volume up. So I think everything's good. Mix said he can hear. Okay. And the frame rate is much better now on the game, so that's great.
Yep. It looks and plays much nicer. I don't have a incredibly fast computer, so so because I'm streaming, it may still not be 100% all of the time, but it does feel a lot faster than it was before.
Yeah, and the other good news is with the help of John Takiris, who has retooled and optimized the song made by someone else. My apologies, I always forget. It's a three-letter combination, something like J.
Oh, JMD.
Yeah, JMD. Oh, I got it right. Good. He did the song for this, which I think might be turned off for the sake of people to be able to hear. But the original version he had made to kind of figure out the song was not yet optimized. So it made the game unable to run on 1 meg Amigas. But the good news is that the game now can run again on 1 meg Amiga 500s. If you use that, you have to check that box that says add 21K, I think it is, in Scorpion Engine. And but it does work now. And the only slowdown I notice at all is during this boss fight here at the end, which makes some sense. And I've already got an idea to optimize. But one of the things on this list is for you to look at the code I've done, because I'll bet there might be a way to optimize that on the code side as well. But also graphically, I've got an idea to optimize it, because he's a very big blitter object at the moment.
Yep.
So
well,
try to optimize it from both ends.
Absolutely. Well, just on the topic of large blitter objects, I just wanted to bring this up so that anyone on the stream that's not familiar with this feature can learn about it. So on our build log, it tells us if we've got an image that's not a perfect multiple of 16 pixels, it tells us how much we'd need to shrink it by to improve the performance. which you can't always do with every object. But for example, so we've got this big face 1. If it was possible to shrink that by 4 pixels, then that would double the speed. It would improve the performance by double.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I'm especially looking at those ones that are reduced by 2 pixels. If you see
mm,
something in this list that says by 1 or 2 pixels, it's almost certainly worth it to give it a shot, and there will probably end up being no noticeable visual compromise to get the better performance. But then when there's bigger things like, 4, 8, 12 pixels, then it's a
mm,
matter of doing a balancing act and deciding, can I still make it look good enough to like it? Do we need that performance increase if we're really getting a lot of frame drops or the game is slowing down? It's time to definitely look at this list and see what can be improved. So those, decrease by 2 pixels are really catching my eye there. I'll definitely take a look at that. But
mm.
I've got a good idea. I think a good idea to take a giant chunk out of the boss, and so far that's the only place I noticed slowdown. Running it on an emulated Amiga 500.
Mm.
So I think once we get the boss optimized, I think we're in good shape regardless. But like I said, I love optimizing. So those ones that say 2 pixels and 4 pixels, I'm really going to take a close look at and see what I can do.
Yep, that sounds good.
Obviously, that's also saving chip RAM, especially on the frames that flip or have a
Mm.
flipped version. So that's, am I calling it the right thing? Chip RAM for graphics and
Yes,
sound?
yes, that's
Okay, great.
correct.
Yeah,
Um,
so any way we could save. There have been several times now where I've added like a one frame feature to add the slide move, for example. It's just a single image for the slide move. And then it doesn't load into a 1 meg Amiga anymore. And then I have to go in and look for ways I can optimize without visually compromising the quality of the game. And but luckily for me, I love those kinds of challenges. So, but anyway, I do have a list of specific things so let me know when you're ready and we
mm.
can
um,
start. Yep.
yeah, yeah. I think we can start from the top.
All right. It's probably best for you to play the game one more time,
Yep.
so I can point out some specific behaviors that I'd like changed.
Right. Well, I'll get that running again, and
Yep. And you don't have to run into any enemies. You could just stay right at the beginning because this first one or two things are related to the duck and the slide move.
yep. Okay. So, what do I need to do?
All right, so there's an undesirable situation right now. If you notice, if you hold down to block, and then yeah, I think there's probably it's a several second delay in the stream because I don't see there you go. Now I see you blocking. Okay, now what should happen if you just transition from down to holding left or right, you should leave the block and start running. But you'll probably notice he will not start running. He'll stay still, even though you're no longer pressing a downward angle. So that's one of the things I wanted to fix. Even if you don't stop pressing down, like right now, if you stop pressing anything, he'll go back to normal. Or probably
Okay.
if you press up, he'll go back to normal. But if you just press left or right, he doesn't leave the blocked state. So that's one of the things I'd like to fix. If you just press left or right without it being on a downward angle, he should start running.
I see. Okay. All right. Yep. Okay. So I've got some idea of that.
All right. And then the other one is only slightly related, and that is I would love for the player to be able to cancel out of the slide. So if you start sliding, when you press jump, I would like not only for the player to go back to normal, and remember, when you slide, he's a new character, a new player actor, but it should switch back to the normal player actor and jump. even though you're sliding. Right now, it just doesn't acknowledge the jump button. And then
Okay.
really ideally, you'll see how you have quite a bit of X inertia, X movement when you're sliding. I would love for it to keep that X inertia in the jump. So if you do a slide jump, you'll do basically a high speed horizontal jump. Does that make sense? So
It.
two things. First,
Mm.
get it to work where you actually can jump out of the slide, and then ideally have him continue with the inertia he had when he was sliding.
Well, we'll have a look at that. So the issue where it doesn't immediately go to a run if you. So let's have a look. So we've got. Oh, now is it still the? There's not a block actor, is there? It's just the block animations.
Yes, for Black, he does not switch actors. He just switches animation.
Okay, so we've got this player block repeat, and so that's a code block that runs every frame if we happen to be in a blocking blocking state. So let's have a look. So okay, so we've got this. So these lines here control whether the player is blocking, and then these.
I hold down, right?
So this relates to um, the down state.
Yep.
And then these relate to the left and right state.
Which
The
is the left and right state? The X, if control X.
mm.
Right.
So I was thinking, well, there might be a very simple solution here, which is we move our end condition down to there. And what that basically means is this code for playing the left and right block is going to be ignored if our Y is not down. If we're not pushing down, if we're just pushing left without pushing down, it's not going to trigger that. It will just go straight into a run.
Right. That sounds like exactly what we want.
While that's starting up, I'm just going to say hi to everyone in chat. So, hello, Skyzoo, Mixel, Chris Retro, and Frozenwell. Thanks everyone for coming. Okay, so if I'm holding down, then I push right, and then I release down, it starts to run again. But I can still look left and right. So I'm holding down and left. Now I'm going to release down.
So if you literally start by holding straight down and then go from straight down to a downward angle to then pure left or right,
yes,
you will just start running, right?
That's correct.
That's
but you
exactly what we wanted.
But you can still hold down left and down right. But if you're only holding right, start moving.
Beautiful. That's exactly what we want.
So that's bug number 1 fixed.
Awesome. This is sort of a bug, but not exactly a bug. But more importantly, it's just it improves your game because the input is more smooth and more like the player would expect. So those are every bit as important to improve and fix as bugs are in game development. Like if you really want to make a great game, in other words, it's not enough that it functions. You really need to polish up how things function and how it feels and all that stuff. It's like I think in a previous video I had mentioned how important it is to really take your time to perfect the numbers for gravity and jump height and jump and fall speed and all of that stuff, because that's one of the biggest in a platformer game. That's one of the easiest ways for a lot of people to immediately sense when they see it or play it if it's a kind of more mediocre fan made game, is that too many people that are just making a game for the fun of it or the first game, they're happy enough that it's working, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
But anyway, so going back to the list, did you want to handle or see if we could figure out the that jumping out of the slide one now, or if you want, I can mention some of the other ones on the list. There is another one related to the blocking animation, so let me know if you want
Um,
to hear that one.
no, I think the slide one sounds like a good one to work on. So basically, you want to be able to if I push jump in the middle of the slide, it should break out of the jump. Or sure, it should break out of the slide, go into a jump, and hopefully maintain the momentum. So
Yeah,
not
so it's going to
just
switch back to the yeah.
hmm.
It's
Well,
going to
let's
switch back to the normal player actor, make him jump at his normal jump height, but ideally also keep the X inertia that he had when he was sliding.
so we've got a slide check, or you've got a slide check code block that runs every single frame. So that would be a good place to start investigating.
Right. And of
Um,
course, that means every single frame while he's sliding. If he's not sliding, that code block does not run.
hmm. And so all we're doing at the moment is we're just checking that if the player is no longer on the platform, then we change it from the sliding player back to the regular player. The reason we do that is because when you slide over the edge of a cliff, you want it to turn back into a regular player rather than regular falling player rather than continue that slide movement.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I see that you have set the control type to CPU platform because when you're in this mode, you're not controlling it with the joystick. You're basically letting the CPU take care of it.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I
uh,
did not want the player to be able to just suddenly change the direction of their slide from left to right.
mm. So let's see if we can do a condition. So I'm going to go condition, and I'm going to go. So we've got control one jump. So that's the button state for player one's jump. And we're going to need to set it to a very specific, or check on a very specific value. So we've got button down and we've got button hit. So the difference is button down is true for the entire time you're holding down the button, but button hit is only true for the first frame that you push the button. So
Yeah, that's the one we want, I think.
absolutely,
It
because
should trigger when the button is hit.
yeah, because you need to push the jump button to trigger the slide anyway. So we don't want it to change into the jump until the player has released the button and then pushed it again.
Exactly.
So I am going to change that to in condition. Now, I'm not totally sure that this logic will work, but if it doesn't... Oh, sorry, I should have... let's get rid of Steam. We should close some of these others as well. Right, so we're going to make it so that if we've hit our jump button, then we want to set the player direction. I think we've got a special direction that's just called jump. Oh,
You mean animation? Or I thought we were just switching him to the normal player type, the player actor.
okay, but you do want it to go into a jump, right? Or did you just want it to go into the regular player?
Well, it needs to do both.
Okay.
But it does have an animation called jump left and jump right.
Well, we'll try jump upwards. That should set it to being not on the platform anymore anyway. So that code should run after we've triggered a jump. If it doesn't run as expected, then we could experiment a bit with the order and the logic. I'll just see what it looks like now. If it does anything weird, like if it continues to slide while it's in the jump, or if it doesn't work at all, we will experiment a bit with it. Oh. Okay, well, I can break out of it, but it immediately goes into a
Lock. Presumably, is that because you are still holding down when you press jump? Try as soon as you slide, let go of downward, and then jump, and see if that fixes that problem. Luckily, you can't die yet.
Not quite. But
I would have assumed you would have wanted to add an explicit switch player actor if control jump is instead of just changing the direction of the player.
yeah, the jump should have removed the platform condition, which would then set it to false. But having said that, probably does make sense to have it change first, because so that the jump animation should be triggered if I do a jump. But I'm just going to try. I'm just going to try it like this. Because at least in theory, changing it back to the player when I've hit jump should mean that the jump is immediately triggered. Okay, well, we're almost there.
He just doesn't have his inertia, and he's playing the block. That was actually the other bug I mentioned that's related to block.
Oh,
The same thing happens if you get hit, and you happen to be holding a downward angle or down. Instead of playing the hit animation, you'll play the blocked animation in the air. In other words, the block animation is overriding everything. I think the same thing happens if you're blocking and press attack. You won't attack. You'll basically go back to the block. So we need some logic that says, hey, block animation, don't override attacks or hit animations and stuff like that. In other words, we need to rein in or limit when the block animation can override other animations.
Actually, I might I might do that next then, and just making it so that it so it must be this player code that handles the
going into
block.
Yeah, I would assume so. The code is big enough now. I don't remember where everything is in the logic either, and I have to sometimes have to search for it. Which luckily you've added that new filter system.
Yep.
Hopefully there'll be an excuse sometime during this stream to show people how that works, because it's extremely handy.
I'm going to put an extra condition in here to start with, just to say if just to make sure we're on the platform. So that's just an absolute
definitely help.
final check. So we want to check the player is on platform. Not 0 will be fine. Oh, and I want to duplicate that. I want to add that for all of them.
This might come in handy later, but I figured I should let you know. I did add a variable. I forget which code block it's in, but it is sort of a super simple state machine variable that I can't even remember what I called it right now, but it's basically whether or not the player is attacking or blocking. Because I use, for the block, in order for it to repel the shot, I use a melee block, a melee collision box.
Oh, okay.
So I have a variable now that when he's playing, when you trigger an attack animation, it sets that variable to attacking, and otherwise I think it's set to 0. So that might be handy. We might be able to use that same variable for other stuff. But there you go. It's not going into the block animation. I'll bet the same thing will happen now if you let yourself get hit by one of the big enemies' shots there and hold down while you're getting hit. You probably will not play the block animation instead of the hit in the air. There. Oh no, it still happens. Did you see that?
Yeah. So if
playing block in the air.
So if I was facing the other direction, then it All right. Well, so I'll come back to that, but for now, if I'm holding down, then I slide, and then I push jump to interrupt it. It just goes straight up and down. But if I'm holding down and left, and then slide, it goes into that.
Goes into what? I'm not seeing the difference.
Oh. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. I see.
So, let's have a look at what we can do. So, left, right.
I mean, it might be something as simple as on that code that lets him or makes him go back to the normal actor and jump when you press jump out of the slide, to just check which direction he's aiming and give him X inertia. So, like, if it was already working because you were holding down left or down right, it doesn't change anything, but that way it covers if you were not pressing down left or down right. You know, what I mean? Like, it's harmless code when you already had the inertia, and if you didn't, it makes sure you do. Like, that might be simpler than using a variable and keeping track of the actual inertia.
Well, so here's a difficulty that I can see, is that the player only takes 2 frames when the joystick isn't being held down to return to, because the max speed in left and right is 4. So with acceleration left and right, it means at 2, it means it's going to take 2 frames to reach 4. So if you're not holding down left or right, and then you interrupt your slide with a jump, it means that you're only going to move slightly left or slightly right. In fact, that may be happening already, possibly. And in fact, I can verify that really quickly. So this feature here lets us have a different acceleration speed for when we're in the midair, because there's a lot of games that make it a lot harder to control. You know, when you're in the middle of a jump, you have less control over your speed left and right. You've got that momentum, and it's harder to bleed it off, or it's harder to, if you weren't running when you jumped, it's harder to get to full speed. So I'm just going to see what happens if I have that air acceleration turn right down.
I assume that would make it worse compared to what we want. We want you to be going fast if you jump out of a slide, and if the air acceleration is slower, wouldn't you be going slower when you jump?
Okay, so that's what I'm getting with not pushing left or right.
Yeah, it kind of feels like you're hitting thick air when you jump now.
And that's so the acceleration is also the de-acceleration, because so if you're moving at 4, then that, and your acceleration left is 2, that also means it's only 2 frames to get down to a speed of 0.
Okay.
So with that value set really low, you do get that nice sort of feel to it where I'll just do it again. So if I block, slide, jump, it does feel like there's momentum, even though I'm not pushing down left or right. I'm wondering if should it, like, if we go into a slide jump, should it continue having that some momentum no matter which way you're pushing the controller?
I would say yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll put that back how it was, and let's have a look at our slider. So, okay, so the slider slides at a speed of 8. I'm gonna make a variable called uh, call it push momentum, and this may not work very well, but I'll give it a I'll do a bit of an experiment with it. So I'm going to set our slide. I'll push momentum.
Right. Probably to 8. So it's the same inertia. As,
but we bleed it off every frame.
Right.
Now I'm just going to have it for just to start with. We'll try it on the right direction, because if it doesn't work on the right direction, it's not worth trying to implement it for the left direction.
Right.
So I'm going to go condition if push momentum is greater than 0. I'm going to try using the push command over. I guess it has to be 1 frame, and then I'll go push momentum. And then we need to bleed off our momentum. We don't want it to be, slide to the entire slide to the other side of the level like that. So we're going to set it to push momentum to push momentum -1.
Over the course of 8 frames, in this case at 25 frames per second, it'll reduce by 1 each frame.
Ah, I spelled that incorrectly. It should be push momentum. Okay, let's try that again. We might want to bleed it off by more than one a frame. We'll see what it's like. Okay, it didn't work. I wonder, didn't do anything at all.
I think I see the character almost going into the walk animation or something in the air because he's being pushed for a frame or two. Maybe instead of push, you want to do a set player position to itself +1 or plus push instead of using push. You know what I mean? The push command. Because I think, as far as I know, like the push command overrides, like if you push something horizontally, but it's got a vertical sine wave CPU movement, push will completely override the vertical position as well. So that could cause a problem with you. If you use push, then you're not going to continue the jump arc, like going up and then falling down. Like it's going to override the gravity while it's being pushed.
That's possible. I might need to check the actual source code. Yeah, unfortunately, this is all sort of stuff that I'd never really sort of a use case I'd never really considered before. But having said that, we should at least still get some sort of push out of that. I'm just going to check that this condition is actually firing, and the easiest way to do that is just make it quit. So if it doesn't quit, then I know something is preventing that code from running, and I can investigate it further. If it does quit, then there's possibly something I haven't considered with. Okay, no, it is. Oh, wait a minute. Let's go back to that. Just going to run that again. I think I did see it move, but that was
Yeah, only like a pixel.
A little bit. That might have been like the natural momentum of the
I think no matter
Just
what,
gonna.
you're not going to be able to use the push because, like I said, it will cancel out the gravity. So you might want to just try replacing the push command with set player position to itself plus the push variable.
I didn't think push affected gravity. I know it would affect other things. I didn't think it would affect gravity, but I'll Now let's So it's trying to push it. It's just not player momentum by X. Huh.
Maybe it's just weird because it's over the course of one frame. Usually push is meant to push something over the
Hmm,
course of several frames.
that's true.
Definitely.
It should be divide by 1. So, admittedly, push isn't something that I use often in my own projects. So,
Yeah, it
okay.
actually, come to think of it, it did work great. I think I'm using push against the player when he gets hit to make him move backward a little.
Hmm. Okay, I'll try that. It could be just some weird thing where, for some reason, over 1 frame is broken.
Yeah.
But let's put that back the way it was, and we'll try that again. And we'll try to do that slide jump. Okay, it is sort of doing it.
It's just
It.
nowhere near the amount of momentum.
Mm,
Are we still doing it over the course of 2 frames because of that seeming issue with it not liking
mm.
doing the push in 1 frame? Then we should double it to 16 instead of not that, but double the push value when you set
Oh,
it
yep,
in
and
the first place.
that means that it would do it for double the number of frames.
No,
Well,
no, no. I'm saying the push variable push momentum. When you set push momentum in the actual slide check,
yeah. So that's what I
you
meant
set
was
to 16.
so that should keep that momentum going longer as well, because it will take 16 frames for it to bleed
Yeah,
off to 0.
you would have to subtract the momentum by 2 as well.
We'll see what it looks like. I guess this could be one of these sorts of things where you could spend forever optimizing it. Oh,
That's actually much closer now to the proper amount of inertia I want. Yeah, that actually looks right, except for the fact that he's playing his run animation in the air. Again, I think it's because of push.
Well, I'll try something.
Yeah.
Because we haven't done our left to right check. So we'll do that. This is something that I need to improve in Scorpion, is making this easy to understand. But we can do a if I do look mask right.
That covers every angle looking rightward. So it's
Yes.
upright, downright, and perfectly straight to the right.
Um, player look there. So doing this bit test of what direction the player is looking versus the look mask. So that's all the possible right directions.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to let's go condition and do else. No, that should be just else. I don't need to check for if it's looking left specifically, because we know if it's not looking right, it has to be looking left. Well, that's true for platform actors. It's not true for like top-down actors, because top-down actors can just look up and down, which doesn't have a left or right value, but platform actors always do. So let's make that minus 16, and also on our let's see here, we need to do handling for the other direction. and we're going to go less than 0. That needs to be an else if. And that line can actually be left just the same, because if it's negative, then we're going to push it by negative pixels.
Right.
And then going to, but we have to add to the push momentum, so we're pushing that value back towards 0.
Yep.
So that should let us do left and right. But before we start the game again, let's see what we can do about the animations. So, play set animation. So I'm having some issues clicking on things. I'm not sure if it's because I'm running it in through OBS, and then with the this frame is might be making it hard for me to click on things. But I suppose be a player jump R, I guess, and then we want the same for the other side.
This does remind me of my most recent feature request, which
Yep.
would be for like an intuitive way for Scorpion to play the jump animation, and it would automatically choose left or right based on which direction the character's facing. So that would get rid of the need for a ton of code that is, if is facing left, then play jump left. If it's facing right, then play jump right.
Yeah, that makes sense to have, and of course we've got like an analog to that is we've got trigger attack animation, and that doesn't care which way you're facing. So doing another one that's the same, but it's trigger the jump animation, that should be doable.
Or it should just be trigger an animation that has a flip. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Anyway, so we've got first time chat by Phase 101. Hello and welcome to the chat. Chris Retro has asked a very good question. So, what's the benefit of using push X rather than setting X position +1 for each frame?
That's what I keep wondering.
The simple answer is collision detection, because if you say if you're setting the player X position directly, then that's going to ignore all wall collision. Yeah, it teleports it, so it could teleport it into the wall. And this is a game that does have walls that we could potentially, end up stuck inside or teleported into.
Yeah, great explanation. Yeah.
It's
So what it's doing, I guess, then Scorpion, if you push, even if you supposedly do an 8-pixel movement, which is what we're trying to do with the first frame of the jump out of slide, and it has to move 8 whole pixels, even though visually that's a teleport of 8 pixels, it's doing a loop and checking the collisions for each pixel of the 8-pixel movements to make sure it doesn't end up teleporting into a wall or going through something it should have hit. Is that yes? Okay.
Yep.
Well, now I completely understand why you was not switching over to, like, it did lead in this situation because there seems to be some kind of bug where you can't do it over the course of one frame properly, so we had to double the number and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a lingering issue that I haven't quite got on top of, is just offering a way of being able to move an object around with move an object around but still respect collision detection. So even if you did something like plus actor X +8, but then if the player
all of the
there's just some issues with things like basically because some collision detections, like with blocks, they can trigger other code blocks to run, and so it gets a bit complicated. But it's maybe something I should seriously take a look at for the next public update. Is how do we make it so that it's easy to make it so that you can move something around within one frame and still have collision detection.
I mean, so far it almost seems to me like push will do that once you can do it properly over the course of one frame instead of a minimum of two.
Mm.
So it seems like once you fix that bug, people could just use push instead of uh, set position, which obviously set position is teleport, and the expected behavior should be to not do the collision check per frame, because that's more optimized for performance, but then there's the huge risk if you're not careful of something getting stuck in a wall or not triggering a hit. That's looking great. That's exactly what I was hoping for, inertia-wise. That's exactly what I wanted, like to be able to easily do a slide jump over holes like that spike pit.
Oh.
Very nice.
Well, so I'll leave that there for now. Yeah, you should be able to tweak those values if you want to get the feeling just right.
Yep.
Well, should we move on to the next thing, or do you think there's some more tweaking we need to do there?
For now, I think the code is fine, and like you said, I just need to tweak numbers. So the next thing. Do we still have the issue where if you're blocking facing the wrong way and get hit, he goes up in the air, still playing the block?
Probably.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't think I've. I'll just double check just to make absolutely sure it still is having that issue.
Okay.
Oh, I wasn't blocking. Now he's in an invincible state forever.
Oh, that was one of the other bugs I noticed.
Okay.
For some reason, if you go into block mode,
it doesn't
stop flashing.
I figure it's probably because we're not running the same player code in the block. But anyway.
I didn't even think of that. That's it doesn't switch what player actor it is when you block, but it is user playing it. Oh, interesting.
Well, so the
potential fix for that, you could go to at the end of the block loop, you could go to the player loop. Player code block.
So it's this invulnerable bit that needs to run on both. I think the problem with running this whole player code when the blocking is making it so that because all of this other stuff could interfere because we're already blocked. But what we can do, so I'm going to make a new code block and let's call it. We've got player code. So I'm going to. I guess you can rename it later if you wish, but I'll call it universal code for now, and this will be code that is meant to run on every player. It doesn't matter if it's a blocker or a slider or a anything else. Then
so we could use go to or go sub from all the other player codes that happen every frame.
Yep.
Yep.
There's actually another option we can do. So if I go, we've got go sub, which basically means we go to our player universal code, and then we continue. We've got another option called inline, and there's advantages and disadvantages to using inline rather than go sub. But the main difference is inline is basically the same as having copied and pasted that entire code in here.
So it uses a little more memory, but it's faster because it's
Mm.
not like searching for code in another spot of memory and keeping
Yeah,
track
yeah,
of where to
that's
go back to.
that's correct. It doesn't have that additional overhead, but it means that I guess it sort of depends. Code blocks generally aren't very heavy memory wise, but they can get quite heavy if you use this quite a lot, especially when you're doing like you're inlining big code blocks into other code blocks multiple times.
Right.
But I think for something that's only a few lines, it probably makes sense to inline it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
And the great thing, obviously, everyone that's watching is you all probably get it, but uh, the um, the code you can keep going back to that one place to edit it, and it gets copied and pasted into the other places you tell it to inline in memory. Like I guess when it's loading in Scorpion Engine,
mm,
or while
uh,
it's compiling. But either way, it's like having the code in several places. So at that memory cost, you get better performance or
mm,
slight performance increase over Go2 or GoSub.
yeah.
Yeah, that
Um,
seems to be like the biggest constant balancing act is optimizing is do you have more memory to spare or more performance to spare, which is more important?
mm. That's yeah, that's sort of an ongoing issue with the Scorpion engine in general because there's a lot of places in the engine where I know that if I sacrifice a whole lot of RAM, I can squeeze a bit more CPU performance out. But
Right.
then it's going to be harder to run on lower end Amigas, things like that. So it is a balancing act. Um, and yeah, so even though this is pretty much the exact same as manually having those lines in here, performance wise, it's a good idea to have. Well, one of the golden rules of programming is don't repeat yourself. So if you've got something that you can put in another code block and then you can inline or go sub elsewhere in the project, it means that like later we decide, well, we look at this code and we think, oh, actually this here is bugged, so we'll fix that bug, and then that fixes it everywhere. But
Exactly.
yeah, if we've repeated ourselves a dozen times, we need to fix it in a dozen places.
Yeah. So in other
Um,
words, if you've literally copy and pasted logic all over the place, every time you need to fix a bug in that logic, you have to remember where you've copied and pasted it everywhere. There's a huge chance you'll forget one or two of the spots where it's copy and pasted. And whenever you're going in and editing and copying and pasting, there's a huge potential for human error just in the fixing or the copying and pasting. So, like every time you have copy and pasted code somewhere, it's basically a level of sloppiness that is welcoming easy, kind of unforced errors, we call it, or just bugs just because of the sloppiness of it.
hmm. All right. Now, I was going to make it so that we also inline that code on our block handler. So that was universal. And I'm just going to give that a quick test. So if I block while facing the other direction, it will still have that jump bug, but hopefully it shouldn't have the bug where it continues to be invincible.
Right.
So look away, shot in the back. Yep. Okay. So the invincibility wore off.
Wait. Very nice.
Okay. Well, we probably need to have that in the slide check as well. Have that same thing where while it's sliding, it's counting down the invincible. So I'll do that right now, and then we will investigate why it
playing the block animation while you're in the air. And hopefully that's related to why if you are holding down and press attack, or press attack and then hold down, you cancel the attack and go into the block.
Just going to make a quick change there. Change it to Elsif. So if we're hit by the big shot, Elsif will hit by the boomerang. Now. Oh, yep, and of course, so the boomerang is an item that we throw, so it doesn't hurt us, and
Right.
We get it back. With the big shot, it looks like physical hit is what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
So let's have a.
I think that basically just checks if something is to your left or right and makes you get hit accordingly, moving to getting pushed to the left or right.
Yep.
And playing the appropriate left or right version of the hit animation.
Okay, so at a glance, I can see a quick solution, which is even though we've set the speed to, or you've set the speed to -16, so that will launch the player in the air. It doesn't straight away realize that that it's no longer on the platform.
Right. Yeah, so you can make the character jump instead.
So no, I should use base, and in the base category we've got set variable. So pretty much any variable like is platform, we can override it, and we can say, well, the player is not on the platform. So that means it shouldn't, because it knows it's not on the platform, it shouldn't go into block. Hopefully, we'll see what happens. So if I go here and look around to get shot in the back, oh no, they didn't do anything. It did look like it had the pain animation for a fraction of a second. I wonder what else it could be.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. Like, you would think once it's playing hit, it's no longer on the ground. So how is the code to make it go into block in the first place triggering at all if that can only happen when the player is on the ground? So, like, if we go back to player code.
Having said that, the player isn't on the ground. Sorry, the player is still on the ground on this frame, because we set the speed, but we haven't moved it. So
I wasn't watching the code because of the several second delay. So I
thought
you had said you were going to switch that to actually make the player jump. Like, I think you have a kind of code in Scorpion where you can trigger a jump, basically.
So I do.
So if you triggered the jump and then switch the animation to player hit, might that do the trick?
I'll just see what happens now.
Yep.
And
the goal is to make sure Scorpion Ninja knows the character is no longer on the ground immediately, so that the very next frame it doesn't allow the player to go back into block because it's technically still on the ground. and therefore the player code for going into block is still valid or still active. It looks like it's still being a problem. My guess is the best chance is to tell it to jump, because then Scorpion probably knows for sure that it's no longer on the ground.
Yeah, although that
Explicitly told it to be jumping.
Though what's confusing me is what I did was basically the same. I'll give this a try. If that doesn't work, I might need to do a bit of a deeper dive into the other code. To move that out. Jump upwards. Player hit R. Maybe just there's nothing special about that player hit R. Should I think? No. So there's no events. Oh, actually, yeah, I think I might know what the issue was, and so I'll see if this could actually fix it. No. Okay, so no, it turns around. That is a very, very odd one. Okay, flare hit R.
I just had an interesting thought as to why he's turning around. Like I said, I use a yeah, actually no, I don't think that's the case, but I use a melee box for the blocking.
Yep.
For it to detect the hit.
Oh, okay. So it could have been okay, so let's have a
I don't
look.
think there's any code that makes them change direction though if that melee box is hit. So that
Well, it's a good place to start investigating.
yeah.
Okay,
I
so
assume the code would be in the big shot actor on collision with melee or from player or something like that.
that one there. Okay, so on
If you look at big shot 1,
I okay, so repel shots.
we want melee repel shots. That's the one. That's the code block in question that has to do with the block mode.
Okay. Wonder why we've got a additional end condition here. I'll get rid of that. In fact, what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna add a return. So that basically cancels out all of the other code, and that should rule in or out whether it's related to that code block. Because if it suddenly starts working, then we know it's something in that code block. We need to dig a bit deeper.
Right. Very smart way to optimize your debugging time.
No, okay, so it doesn't seem to be. It doesn't seem to be relevant because none of that code would be running anymore.
Right.
On collide with player, we've got hit by shot was, and that does. I'm going to turn that off. Second, and that should basically do nothing.
If he can't get hit at all, then he can't go up in the air and play the wrong block animation still. So
Okay, so there's definitely something physical hit. Go down here. Actually, I'm gonna turn off all those lines.
Christo said something interesting in the comments. I don't think it has to do with our problem, but it might. When I was working on my ropes, when I jumped on a rope, it was flipping direction. It appeared to be related to me using the change animation. I had to set the delay to 0 on the animation, I think. Well, he's not turning around.
Yeah. So there was a bug recently in Scorpion which I've patched out where animations sometimes wouldn't play at all if the delay was set to 0. Although that might be that that actually might be worth something worth checking out to see if any of these have sort of 0 frame animation. So the block is at 1 frame, and I think the other one was player. No, not hit. Was there? What was it called? It was called. Okay, it was called player hit L. So hit L is when they're actually wounded, and that's for 15 frames. Well, let's see what happens if I. Interesting. Okay, so what we got is so it plays this hit animation,
Right.
and so it must be to do with something to do with hit animation. Let me just see. Okay, so what do we got? So we've got player animation.
Well, obviously, the reason he's going
Oh,
block now is you turned off the code that makes him jump up in the air, so he's still on the ground and therefore holding down.
I'm just going to check check something. No, okay, so um Chris says when it finished, the animation plays, it returns to the actor's default direction. I wonder if that's. Oh, the look. The look direction is left, so that's not.
That makes sense, actually. I think there are two separate things. I think
Yep.
there's setting a variable specifically saying the player is looking left or right. And just because you play the animation of looking left or right does not change that special variable of whether or not the character is looking left or right. So that's probably true. I probably have a bunch of code in here that changes the animation to look left or right versions, but doesn't change that specific variable that Scorpion needs to keep track of whether it should be playing the left or right animation when it goes back to one of the automatically triggered animations. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But at a glance, I can't see this specific trigger. So I thought it could have been the X speed, but it's not that. Um, let's go back to this physical hit. Right, okay, so none of those seem to be. So it does seem to be triggering this animation is changing the where hit R. And it doesn't seem to be playing the entire animation. It just because that's supposed to go for 15 frames, so that's nearly
Yeah, it's getting canceled out to block for some reason really quickly.
Um,
Like we could put a very explicit thing in the code that makes it switch to black that says if player is playing hit left or hit right, then don't allow it to block.
let's try well, hmm.
But that's part of the reason I added that state variable, because that could end up handy. Like when he gets hit, we could have a specific state that's called like stuck or non-responsive or something like that, and then moves like attacks and blocks and slides should not be possible when you're hit because you can't do anything while you're hit.
So I just worked it out.
Oh, okay.
So it's nothing to do with any of this. It's on our player block repeat. There is a so this is a bad condition because we're saying if the anime if the like, if we're doing block
Yeah,
and the animation is the player block,
I see.
then do that left. Otherwise, in all other cases, do player block right.
So it's every animation, not just the opposite playing block animation.
Yes. So the assumption we made there was when we're blocking, it would either be the left block or the right block, but in fact, in this particular case, it was neither. So we can.
Could you not replace the else with else if and specifically check for player block R? Line 6 else?
Well, I'm just wondering if we like maybe we should just have it so that like we probably don't want any of this code to run if if we're hurt, because if we're hurt it's supposed to go through the whole I'm not actually sure why it's still triggering. It might be just because it's a one frame animation, so as soon as we're scheduling the next animation sorry the next animation to play, it still does the end of animation. um, So I'm just going to try this as a really quick, rough fix.
See, this is the perfect example of how it would be great if we could just say if the animation is either left or right version of block. Or do we want block or do we want hit? Like, are you exiting out if it's playing hit, or are you?
We're exiting out if it isn't playing either block.
Okay.
Now I'm hoping that's going to work, but we will see. It's possibly an editor bug because it shouldn't. Because we've triggered the change in animation, it shouldn't trigger the end of animation on the one that was already playing, if that makes sense. Okay, so that's no longer changing the direction.
Nice. We just need to add the vertical movement back.
Mm.
I think you had like.
Yep. I took away some. I disabled some code just to rule in or out that that it was related, but that stuff that I commented out, we can just put back. So let's untick that and untick that, and let's give that another go.
I had a feeling this would be the trickiest bug to fix when I was making this list.
Well, it's looking pretty good to me.
Wait, that's the expected behavior. Excellent. And I'm glad you also got rid of the other one I thought would be tricky is why he was staying invulnerable if you duck. I'm glad you took care of that one really quickly.
Yep. Okay, well, we're at the 1 hour 30 mark.
Okay. I've got a couple of really low-hanging fruits if you want, or if you want to switch over to something else, that's fine.
No, I think I guess we may as well finish everything on the list.
Okay. Well, there's 20 more. No, I'm just kidding. So the next one is if you play again and make your way all the way to the right where the boss intro happens, where the sprite-made version of the boss goes flying off of the right-hand side of the screen, you'll notice the scrolling gets limited, so you can no longer walk back to the left. You're stuck staying on that part of the map now.
So that's to force the boss fight.
Yep.
Oh, hang on.
Yep.
Oh, did I break something else? Did I leave something else turned off, or what? Did I change that?
The repel shot. Repel shot is.
Oh, yeah, still the return. Yeah, okay, still got the return on that. Okay. Oh, so I should test that all over again just to make sure that you know, I can get hit in the back of the neck and you know not have it glitch out on me.
Good. And remember, you want to either repel the shot, with attack. There you go, 3 times, or you could just jump across with good timing and slash him with your sword 3 times. I do still notice sometimes that you can kind of go through and get hit. I actually think I might know why that's happening with those roller enemies when you do the downward one-hit kill, downward stab. I think what's happening is the sword collides with the ground, so you're about to go into your stuck in... Even though there's an enemy there too, I think it's triggering the stuck in ground animation, and then you get hit immediately because you're then you're in a vulnerable state. Oh, I didn't mention that other gameplay feature I added. When you do stick yourself in the ground, you have to shake left and right if you want to get out of that animation quicker, where you're pulling the sword back out of the ground.
Neat.
So that all works fine as far as I know. You see the left-right arrows? So the more quickly you press left and right a few times, the quicker you'll yank yourself out of the ground, the sword out of the ground.
Yeah. So I've noticed if I start waggling left and right really quick, it gets out straight away. Whereas it takes a second or two if I just leave the joystick.
Right. Which, if there's enemies on screen rolling at you or shooting at you, that second difference makes a huge difference. So if you go a little farther, the boss intro should trigger, unless it did already and I wasn't watching. Did it?
Oh, it looks like it hasn't.
I think. Oh, weird. Is that a bug? Yeah, that must be a bug. Could you try running one more time? Maybe we somehow missed something. Where did the boss intro go?
Oh, actually, let's Well, help me to understand. how it'll work. So I'm assuming you've got an object somewhere. Oh yeah, that looks like it. So that's
It is an invisible object, unfortunately.
okay. So that's so that one. Have a look. So 29. So BG boss sprite.
No, well,
No.
that's the boss right, but that's not the one that
Oh,
triggers. So
that's
we're
not the
going to
trigger. So it's that one there.
look at the one under the center of that column. You see the, yep, right there. I'm pretty sure.
So 30. Oh, is that a?
It's
Oh,
actually
yep.
a
So
blitter, an actor,
yep.
I think.
Okay, so it's called boss trigger.
There you go.
And let's have a look at that.
I think it needlessly has a big giant collision box, but all I'm doing is checking versus its X position versus the players. And if the player goes beyond it,
Yep.
that triggers the code.
Okay, so I think this is probably going to be the cause. Is we've got recycle mode as trash. So
Oh,
what?
there you go. That's a problem.
So what could have happened is that I could have.
Scrolled it off screen.
Yeah. So I think I was sort of going. I was sort of walking back and forward. So I got into a state where maybe it had spawned, but then get rid of it straight away. So we're gonna change our recycle to never because we don't want this to be deleted until it's done its thing.
Right.
And I'm assuming we've got boss intro trigger. We've got some code.
Yep.
So boss intro trigger. So let's have a
So that presumably is going to make the sprite of the boss visible and get it moving.
Oh, yep. So that sets camera bounds, and then for each.
Right, that was kind of the bug that I was going to point out. That should be an easy fix, but I wasn't sure of the
Yep.
best way.
Mm-hmm.
We've locked the scrolling, but the player can still walk beyond to the left off visible screen and just fall down into the spike pit. So,
all right. Okay. Yep.
is the best solution to create a column of blocks off screen to block the player, or is there another way to block the player movement now to match this new smaller scroll area?
Well, so what we can do.
Generate a wall.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I just wanted. So you are happy with the like where it sets the camera to?
Yes. But the
What?
player can walk off screen to the left, and that we don't want that. We want him to no longer be able to walk any farther than
So.
that same coordinate.
So probably the easiest thing to do is we want to do something with on leave screen. So we've got different events. We don't have to put it on every direction, but it might be worthwhile putting it on the left one at least. And so I'll make a new code block, and I'm going to call it screen block left.
Limit player X or something.
I was just thinking, because you might want to use this for other things as well. Like you could potentially use this for an enemy that you want to keep on screen.
Right.
But all we need to do is, well, hopefully this will work. If we teleport our player X position to, we got
Basically the left edge of the screen.
Yeah, hopefully it's going to work. Hey, first time chat from Pedalbite. Welcome to the stream. And yes, we do has platformer.
There will definitely be some pretty nice platforming in this game once I get a chance to design some real levels.
Okay, so it looks like oh
There's
no,
the
that
boss. Okay.
now that didn't work, but I think we did. I might have forgotten to actually link that.
Oh, trigger it. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so we aren't actually triggering that. So screen block left. So you can do all sorts of things with this on leave screen. Like if you've got a like a game that doesn't scroll, like some of those old 8-bit ZX Spectrum games, where like Jet Set Willy, where you walk from one room to the next. You can turn off scrolling and then just make it that when you walk off the screen, you just move the camera over by one screen.
Right.
But remember the original NES Zelda with the when you leave the screen to the left or right, it doesn't just snap; it just sort of like scrolls over to the next room.
Right.
That's another thing that we're able to do with that function.
Nice.
So that's,
Yeah, Castlevania is similar when you go through a door in the original Castlevania game.
Yep. So yeah, I can't move that way any further.
Awesome. There, that's exactly what I wanted. Yep.
Oh.
All right, so the rest of the stuff, I think, let me check my list, is really low-hanging fruit. You'll see I under-guessed, if you were to restart this and keep running all the way to the right after the boss triggers.
Yep.
I didn't wait for the boss sprite to completely leave the level on the right. So if you are in a race with it to the full right of the level, you'll see the boss sprite disappear like a couple tiles too soon.
All right.
On the real one.
Mm-hmm.
So we just need to change that code that waits for it to reach a certain X coordinate before it destroys itself and creates the real boss actor. We just need to change that X coordinate so it's completely off the map.
Mm.
So that's a super easy one if you want to do that one.
Yep. Well, let's have a look at our because we need to make sure that our okay. We need to make sure that. Oh no, that's. Oh, well, actually, that is the that's the spawner, right? Like that's the thing that does the animation that goes off the right. So we need to make sure that it can actually leave on the right. So we'll go allow walking through solid tiles. Actually, we might as well set all of these to none, just so that it doesn't ever get stuck on any tiles. It should just float through the level. We've got boss intro move, right?
Yeah, I think that's just the thing that keeps it moving to the right while it's also doing the sign movement. But I think I could also just change the sign movement code to also be moving to the right while it's doing the up and down sign movement. So that's probably unnecessary code. Because it's supposed to like gracefully move up and down a little bit, but keep going to the right until it reaches its destination. There it is, the 1280.
Yep.
Is when it would spawn the real boss, so that number should be increased.
So how much do you want to add to it?
I'm not sure. I could load the level map, or we could just instead check
what
for literally if it goes off the map. Is there a scorpion
what
code for that?
I mean, we could just use that again, the on leave screen again.
We don't want it for screen though. We want it for the actual map.
Oh, true. Yeah. Okay. So no, there's nothing for leaving the level specifically. But let's have a look. So,
I can check the size of the map.
So it's 80 pixels. Sorry, it's 80 tiles wide. We just need to multiply that by 16.
16.
Okay. So it looks like it spawns at exactly the very edge of the map, but you want it to be a bit further so that the entire object is off. So,
Exactly.
um,
So give it like another
another
24 or
of
32
32.
pixels.
I'll add 32 on it.
Yep.
So gonna go greater than 1280 plus 32.
Yep. And while we're at it, one of the other very low hanging fruit was right now the boss spawn's a little too high. So I'd
Ah,
like it to spawn about a tile lower, and there is a code block for that. I think it's called
spawn boss.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's
Just
have
have
a
it
look
spawn a
at
little
spawn
lower.
boss. All right. Okay, so well, yeah. So it being negative. Oh, so you want to move it down by
Yeah,
a tile.
just get rid of
So,
that. You probably just
or
get rid of that.
yep,
Move new to -20. We don't need that.
or do
You want to do that first?
well, because yeah, so we wouldn't need this line at all
Yeah.
because that would just be setting.
Get rid of line 3 completely. Yeah.
Um. Oh, excuse me. I'll just comment it out for now, just in case we change our mind and we decide we want it a bit lower or a bit higher.
All right, exactly.
You got a couple of comments in the chat.
Okay. Oh, thanks, Mixel Slab. I like how it flies in on the background. Yeah, super easy effect with the leftover sprites we had, and it just makes the and thank you. Is that pedal bite? I'm a little far from my screen. I need to check my glasses prescription, I think. But thank you very much. Uh, Both Corey and I in BitBeamCannon are professional pixel artists. I did all the art for this game so far, but Corey might join in on the project at some point if he's interested. All right, let's see.
Now there is a bug in Scorpion that I'll need to fix, which was when it's at the very edge. Well, in fact, I can do it with the player as well. When it's at the very edge,
Yeah.
it sort of doesn't. So that's just to do with the logic of. Yeah, but basically, Scorpion has some logic to say, well, if it's going to be blitted outside of memory, then cut off part of the edge. But it looks like it isn't set to work properly with the right edge of the entire level, and maybe the left edge as well. I might need to check that as well.
Right.
But yeah, so that was basically as you wanted it. Or did you want me to start it again?
Yeah, no, that looks great. So I think we might still have the issue. The last kind of big issue gameplay wise is I think if you are blocking and then press attack, you'll play the attack animation for 1 frame and then go back to blocking. So like block will cancel anything else while you're on the ground, I think. And ideally, if you press attack, it should not let you block until the attack is done. Oh, it looks like it is behaving.
So
Keeping down held that whole time.
yep. I'm not releasing down. I think it was probably the same issue as the the same bug as the one that turned the direction when we were hit in the back.
Awesome. Well, that's great. So the last big behavioral thing I've never done in Scorpion is once you kill the boss, it should wait like 2 seconds and then just restart the whole level. That way people playing the demo won't just end up stuck in an enemy-less spot for the next person that plays the demo. Like I'm going to bring this with me to Amiga 37.
Yep.
And in case I'm not there to restart it or something. Beating the boss and then eventually also dying, but dying isn't functional yet. You lose all your hit points, but don't die yet.
Well, I'm going to add a code block called. I'm just going to call this restart level.
Yep.
And I'm just going to go level and then load level and then. In fact, I'm going to set the level back to the current level. So load level basically says doesn't matter what level we're on, just load it again.
Right.
I'm just going to make sure, like before I fight the boss again, I'm just going to connect it to a. I am going to connect it to a keyboard key, so I can test it right at the start of the game, see if there's any bugs with it before we make it so that it happens straight away after. Well, it happens a couple of seconds after the boss dies.
Right.
Sorry, I'll just kill this guy, then I'll push the button. Okay, so if I push it now, what happens? So it fades out, disappears for a second, comes back, and then everything's back how it was.
Awesome. That's what we want.
So you might want to consider if you want the same behavior with the player dying, or if you want it so that, like, the player goes back to the start, but but everything they've destroyed is gone, or if you want it so that there's a checkpoint. So if you died about here, the game starts from here again, or if you want it so that the enemies all come back, but you start in this position rather than the starting position. These are all sorts of things that you may need to consider.
Right.
Well, let's have a look at that. The boss destroy, or the um.
Yeah, I think there's a thing called blow up, which I think it gets triggered to blow up the boss, and that works for maybe many enemies. I don't remember for
Oh.
sure. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's um.
Um.
We'd have to
Well,
trace it.
let's.
Like if you. Yep.
Okay, so we've got this hit basic.
Yeah, and then hit basic goes to like that does the damage, and then blow up checks if he's lost all hit points, and then blows him up if. I think it's called something like blow up.
Oh, we've got flying hit away.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so let's try that one then. That code blocking.
Oh, yep, and
That
that
actually
goes
goes.
to blow up.
There you go.
And so that blow up, I assume, is going to be used for many different.
Yeah, it Um, already is.
Um,
Like the rolling enemies.
mm.
So we
So,
would have to probably go to blow up, but first, when we know it's still that enemy, the boss, we would maybe want to do a yield and a
mm.
restart the.
I was thinking exactly that.
Yeah,
So we need to start with a condition. We need to set the actor type, and I think it's called Big Flyer.
I think so. Yeah.
And it has to equal. Um, oops. It has to equal Big Flyer. Let's have a condition.
That's
Else.
interesting. I didn't think the actor type could be the name of the actor. I thought that was for like whether it was a um, player or actor or stuff like that.
No,
Or is
so
that not a type? Is that a class or something?
yeah, so that would be the class. We can't currently check for the class in the conditions.
Gotcha.
Anyway, so we say, well, if it's a big flyer, then we still want to destroy it, and we've still got that explosion there. I'm gonna go. Um, oh no, that will be under base and
You also want to always destroy the actor, regardless of whether or not it is a boss, right?
Shall we make it 4 seconds or 3 seconds? Ah, because it's running in 25 frames mode.
Right.
So 3 seconds would be 75. We'll make it 100, which is 4 seconds.
Okay.
And then we'll make it so it's yielded on the level and the levels timer for 4 seconds. If nothing else interrupts the levels timer, so you should normally just use the level timer for things that are, sort of universal, sort of affect the entire game, and reserve and use like the actor timers for when it's something that's only relevant to a single actor.
Right.
So we yield for. Oh yeah, that says 2 seconds, but that's assuming 50 hertz.
50
Yep.
FPS. Right.
And then we'll just do a go to, and we're just going to go restart level. And then I'll just do a speed run. I think that's quite cool, just sort of sliding, jump, or if I time it right, sliding, jumping.
Yeah. I think people who haven't seen this game before don't know that you can bounce off enemies and go up on those broken. There is one enemy coming. You can bounce off of him. You killed him. Too late.
Oh,
But yeah, you
can I?
can go up. See, if you see those pots up there, you can actually go up there by bouncing off the enemy and then walking on the broken column and jumping up from there onto the others. One thing I am going to add right now, when the big shot hits the ground and spreads out, I want you to be able to block that explosion that happens on the ground.
Mm.
But right now you can't do that. But that should be easy enough for me to do on my own. There we go, he's dead.
Level 2.
There you go. I'll also try to work on, I have to come up with what I want to do visually for when the player dies, and then I'll plug that in.
Yep.
But so if there's any time left, I did want you to take a quick look at the every frame code that happens for the boss fight, because I have a feeling there's a smarter or a better, more optimized way to do what I'm doing.
Okay, so I take it. Oh, so you've got a boss 1 AI.
There you go.
And that's.
And what I'm trying to do is basically every second or every half a second or something, I want it to basically have something like a 50% chance of doing something or something like that. So that's why I start it with a dice roll of 25, because there's 25 frames per second. So, but I have a feeling generating a random number is kind of expensive. So is there a better
No,
way?
I don't think they'll be too expensive.
Okay.
I was just confused by this one thing where we've got the same code repeated 3 times.
Oh, okay. I don't know if I'll remember why I did that. Let me see. Roll dice. So what I'm doing is I'm setting a different kind of X position target.
Yep.
So the boss randomly goes to a different spot. Why I'm doing that 3 times per loop of the code, I don't remember. Let me see. Yes, animation.
I suspect it might be so like it looks like it can move up to 3 frame. Sorry, 3
Pixels.
3 pixels per frame. And I guess you might have done it so that, if it happens to go further than the player, then it.
That is exactly it.
Okay.
That way
Um,
it'll move as fast as 3 frames. So we could theoretically maybe use push and then do a X coordinate check or something like that.
um,
Or maybe not. Maybe this is already the best way to do it. So the
well,
player
no, we
goes
can.
left and right at three.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can do some cleanup here. Like, for instance, we don't need to check because we know at the start that the animation is going to be, that. So we don't need to keep checking that. So that will give us a little bit of an optimization, and we get rid of these. Um, Hector X. But that's still, that's still three conditions, 3 times for checking. And there is what I'll suggest. So I'll turn these off, and I'm just gonna.
Yeah, there's a good chance that it does not need to be that pixel accurate. Like if he's a couple of pixels over to the
Oh,
left or
okay.
right of the player will still be able to repel the shot. That was my big concern. So that was probably overkill.
Yep. Oh, okay. So it basically makes the player go to a random. Sorry, makes the thing go to a random direction. It's a random pixel. Um,
Yeah,
it,
exactly.
if it doesn't need to stop perfectly on a dime, then that's probably fine.
Oh,
If
that's what it was. That's why I was stopping it. That's why I was doing it 1 pixel at a time 3 times.
Yep.
Because if I'm right, it was passing the target almost
Oh,
every
and
time,
then
and
coming
then would
back.
jiggle left and right. It
Yeah.
would
Okay.
jiggle left
So
and right
that's
by a pixel or two constantly.
so that is a This is how I would solve it. So I would still use the +3. Then I would just add a condition, which is we just want to say, well, is our if actor var 5 is sorry, if actor var 5 is now less than actor X. So if that condition is reversed, um, oh, sorry, I keep clicking the wrong thing. End condition. Ah, whoops, sorry, I shouldn't have. I code in a bunch of different languages, and so I keep getting them mixed up. But if if activar 5 is less than actor X, and I'll just make a comment that we've overshot it,
Right.
because if that's reversed, then it's overshot, and then all we need to do is if we duplicate that line, and we're just going to go actor X equals actor var 5.
The other option would be to update the actual target number to match the overshot so it doesn't consider itself wrong or overshot anymore. Does that make sense?
Um, what?
Like whatever
Yeah, I mean, technically,
variable 5. Yeah, it could update. You could update a variable 5 to match where it is now that it overshot it, and then it would not jiggle anymore either.
that's true, and that would work. Just the reason why I'd consider this one to be the correct
More
approach
correct.
is like you could end up slightly less than or slightly more than that bounds range.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um,
But only by 2 pixels.
mm,
So in this case, it wouldn't be a big deal. And you could also reduce your bounds by 2 pixels to compensate for that.
mm.
But I'm just doing creative problem
Yeah.
solving here, making it more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe that's a tiny bit more optimized than what you did, but certainly not by much, if at all.
Mm. Um,
Pedal Bite was asking some questions about, does each component of an entity have its own variable? I'm not sure what he means by component in that case. Because I see actor animation, actor, big flyer, etc.
So, I'm going to bring up the list of sort of system variables, and so there's quite a big long list of them. But you can see where we've got like actor X, actor Y, X speed and Y speed and push, and the type, the look direction, the animation, and these variables. These are sort of appointed to the currently relevant actor. So you could have 30, it's like 30 actors all at the same time, but this is going to be referenced to the one that the code is running on. So
Right.
if there's a collision between
enemies on the screen at the same time, 5 of all the same kind of enemy.
Yes.
They all keep separate track of all of their X coordinates and their hit points. Like if you give them like variable 1 hit for hit points, it's going to keep track of that particular variable for that particular instance.
Yeah. Yep. So these activar 1 through 5 in particular are useful for tracking things like you got 30 enemies in a level and they've each got their own health. So you don't want to create like 30 variables and then try to connect each enemy to that specific variable. Makes it much easier just having it so that each enemy has a set of generic variables that you can use for anything. Anyway, I hope that answers your question, Pedalbite.
Yep. Also, we went through the entire list, so
Yeah.
good job. We cleared.
Oh, that's good.
There's a few more things I want to do, but I think I can do them on my own, and I can get back in touch with you if I run into any trouble.
Yep.
Like, I'm definitely going to add the actual death and make the level restart after the death animation, and a few more tweaks. Like right now, there's a bug with you can switch weapons from the boomerang to the bomb.
Yep.
And right now, for some reason, even though it looks like the bomb only takes a small amount of your green meter at the bottom, once you do one, you can't do any others. So I'm sure I have a silly bug where it's checking to see if you have enough energy to do the bomb, and it's checking against a giant amount for some reason, but then only deducting a small amount. So there's some simple things like that I still need to add or clean up, but I think we're in otherwise really good shape, and we certainly covered tons of issues in this stream. So, was there anything else you wanted to do in this stream? I can definitely hang around until you're done, regardless of if it's still Scorpion Boy related.
Well, it might be good to have question time for a bit. I see Chris Retro has a question. And so what Chris said is, that reminds me, I wanted to ask if there was a way to select an actor. Currently, I'm using a for loop on all the actors of a certain type and look for the one where I set a var to 1. Yeah, I think that's probably about, with the current version of Scorpion, I think that's about the best way you can use to find and select a certain actor. So for example, so an example we've got in this game is what was it? Boss intro trigger. So what that does is it finds all of the BG boss sprites. It happens to just be one. So it just happens to be one boss, and it executes that the boss intro. So whatever code we put in boss intro, we will run on every boss. Because there's only one boss, but if there happened to be more than one boss, it would trigger more than one boss to start. And then within here, like if we had multiple bosses, but we wanted to make it so that only one of them gets triggered because of a certain condition, then we can have some conditions in here to make sure it's the exact boss that that we're referring to. Pedalbyte has said per frame update. Not sure if it's something you can cache or hold the address of. That's something that I will need to I'll need to consider is how could we make it so that we have a permanent pointer to a specific actor. But I guess it with Scorpion here it is at the moment. You might want to consider, instead of, like, if you're using for each loop, so for each loop isn't very fast, but it's fine to use for things that, like, events that get triggered once. If you were doing something for every frame, you might want to attach some code to the actual actor. So, for example, in here we've got this boss one AI code that runs every single frame on that type of enemy, and that could be a better way than finding every big flyer object and then running code on it, if that makes sense. Um, well, do we have any more questions for the session? Pedalbyte says, I didn't get the part about the tag. Okay, so tag is it's a way of categorizing it. So
I could explain it.
Yeah.
How I use it here.
So I see
Yep. Go ahead.
I see you've got two boomerangs that have the tag.
Tag, exactly.
So that's a way of saying in code we could do we could do a code where we could go condition and then we go if actor
Like
tag.
if an enemy is getting hit by a projectile and that projectile's tag is boomerang, then we could use the same code and it will work with either of those actors because they both have the tag boomerang.
Mm.
And then I also use that to differentiate between ground-based enemies and flying-based enemies. I have a tag called Flyer. So even though it's still using mostly the same code, a little bit of the code is going to check to see if that tag is called Flyer and do something different that it won't do if the tag is not Flyer.
So so it's something we could, like, it just makes code a bit easier, because if we didn't have the tag, then we would need to do a condition for, like, is this boomerang the regular boomerang, or is it boomerang B? If we had a whole bunch of boomerangs, then we could have a really big long list of conditions.
Yeah, it's really handy, really, really handy. And that way you don't waste one of the variables, which can get pretty precious.
Mm.
And you're not doing like for each object loops, check the variable and stuff like that.
Yep.
You just say if it's overlapping a projectile and that projectile has this tag, then behave this way or execute this code block or this part of a code block or something like that.
Mm.
It's a really tidy way to categorize actors into different things that can use the same logic. And depending on the tag, you're either going to ignore certain parts of the logic or do certain parts of the logic because it is that particular classification of thing.
Mm. Certainly.
So
And
tag is like I think Eric said, tag is like classifying things.
certainly. Another example was so I've been working on a game that's sort of a bit like Alien Breed with John Shakiris, and there's a bunch of enemies in the game that are made out of metal, and then there's sort of mutant enemies that are made out of flesh. And depending which kind you shoot, it will either make like a metallic clank, or it will make like a blood splat. And so, because there's lots and lots of different robots, and then there's lots and lots of different mutants, it keeps the code really tidy by having the tag system.
Right. You're not going, oh, if it's robot one actor or robot two actor, then do the clang. You're just saying if it's whatever, if it's got the tag metallic or robot, then it will do the clang or a
Mm,
nice bloody squelchy sound if it's an organic enemy.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um,
Super handy.
mm. um, so, we've got a question from SkyZoo73. Um, do you plan to add multi-channel routing, more than 4 channel for the music on Scorpion? I think on AGA machine it can be worth it. Um, I haven't really planned to change the audio library. I'm not actually. So I'm using a third-party plugin for music for playing back mod files, and it's the fix library or the PHX library that I think it's used in a few. I think in a few commercially released games. It's used in. I'm pretty sure it's used in Red Pill game editor as well. Um, what the advantage with it is that it it works out. Well, it handles sound and music, and it basically says, well, if you've got a mod that uses all 4 channels, so you've got music file that plays on all 4 channels simultaneously, then then you try to trigger a sound effect. With most libraries, it just wouldn't handle it. With this one, what it does is it says, okay, well, I'm going to look at all of these channels to see where I can squeeze the sound effect into. And so it basically inserts sound effects into the music on the fly, and that allows you to have music on all 4 channels without interfering with the sound effects. Now, I am familiar with some concepts around, like, there are some trackers that support 8 channels at once, and what they basically do is they take the data on 2 channels and then average it, and then put that into one of the Amiga's 4 sound channels. Um, but so far as I know, that isn't available on the sound library I'm using at the moment. I'm not sure if anything like that will be supported in the future, but I'm not entirely opposed to looking at different sound libraries if the um, if the opportunity comes up. But for the meantime, however, I think I'm pretty well happy with the PHX sound library.
Yeah, I've been impressed with how infrequently a sound should trigger and doesn't. Like when you're playing, it's very rare. Uh, in this game project that we were working on this stream. And
Oh,
that's I don't know for sure if this song was made to use all four channels or three. Um, but you could definitely get good results. That was definitely the one thing that always bugged me about Blood Money, otherwise a very high quality game, was that you could only, there were a lot of Amiga games you could only choose music or sound effects.
mm,
And it's I'm very happy that Scorpion Engine just seamlessly allows you to have both.
mm. And yeah, and that's only really possible because the sound library is engineered to, smart enough to work out how to slip sound effects into the into the music stream
Music.
without
Yeah.
interrupting notes. Um, Otherwise,
It would be cool if it would be cool if you could designate a specific channel of the song that's like less important. So, like this sound is safe to override, like some really quiet ambient aspect of the music or something.
mm,
Like that would be the first one that like if there was no completely free channel, then it could go. Oh well, this channel it's okay to override with the sound effect.
mm,
But that would be like, super perfection for this. I'm certainly not complaining. What Scorpion currently does is already pretty darn excellent. Yeah, Octamed was awesome. I did own Octamed back in the day. Not that I ever put good use to it and made a song, but I
yep.
really liked the technology. But I also assume that that amount of processing to kind of fake 8 channels is just like you were saying. For AGA, it's probably fine for most AGA games, but since I'm trying to make my game run on an OCS Amiga, I can't imagine I could get away with everything I'm doing and 8 channels of sounds being simulated.
Mm. Um, but yeah, we never know though. So maybe someday in future there could be an elegant solution where you can well, maybe the like if there's an option to choose Octamed as the sound library rather than PHX. Blitz Basic does happen to have Octamed built in, but I have had some issues with the built-in implementation. Hello, Otto Retro. Welcome to the chat. SkyZoo73 says Rundar on EAB did an awesome routine for channel mixing, low performance consuming, 3 to 4%. Yeah. Oh, so that's the sort of thing. Possibly keep an eye on for consider for future updates of Scorpion Engine. Because one of the other complications is I'm trying to squeeze down the size of the engine so that we can fit more stuff into. Well, we can fit bigger levels into memory on smaller Amigas. Adding more routines, adding more music routines is definitely going to put up the size of the executables. So unless there's a way that I can keep keep the music stuff completely separate and then just load it as I need it, that could, having additional sound libraries on top of what we already got uh, could cause us some issues. Just wanted to show a feature that has recently been added to Scorpion. I don't think I've showed this on stream before, but this is it's a musical keyboard that we can use to play back sound effects at different frequencies.
Yeah, I'm so happy you've added that feature to Scorpion, the ability to play back sound effects at changed frequencies. You can have a much more rich collection of sound effects in your game with a much lower use of memory.
Absolutely, because
fantastic feature.
Because samples they use up, they can use up a lot of memory. Especially if they're long, especially if they're if they're more than 11K. But with this, like we can so like this is our attack sound, and if we're so the regular sound I think is about there, but if we take it down an octave, it sounds a bit more like an explosions. So we could use it for those explosion sort of sounds.
Yeah.
And then at the other end, it almost sounds like a click type sound.
Yeah, like so many different shots, like really short, quick blips and stuff like that. It's amazing. You can just have this huge variety of different, video gamey sounds out of one tiny sound sample. And you'll probably find a handful of every sample you add to the game. There's probably a handful of different great uses for it if you find the right frequency. And like you said, just to mix it up, we were discussing this before, like the footsteps in this current game that we were working on this stream. Every time it hits one of the frames of the run animation where a foot has hit the ground, it triggers a footstep animation sound. And being able to vary the pitch of the little footstep sound a little bit helps. Every time the foot goes down will really help that sound not be too repetitive. And in Metro Siege, the voice, all the different combat grunts and stuff for the female character Kim are just the male grunts at a higher frequency, and it still sounds great. So, and that's where you really get a huge savings, because those longer human voice samples tend to be, the biggest memory consumers.
Right. I got another question from Pedalbyte. Have we tested the core on ARM? I'm getting errors trying to run a fresh project. Let me know if we should create a GitHub issue. The target was Windows 11 64-bit on a virtual machine. I'm assuming that's a like one of the new Macintosh ARM computers. So the short answer is no. I haven't heard of any such issues. I don't have an ARM computer myself. I do have a MacBook Air that's an Intel one, but even that I haven't really tested Scorpion on it. Scorpion running in a virtual machine. The short answer is I'm not really sure what issues we would have running it on an ARM processor, even in a virtual machine environment. And I'm not sure what I could do to fix it, other than this is something I've been considering for a while. Is Scorpion is currently built as a Windows 64-bit application. There's possibly no need to there's possibly no need to have it as a 64-bit. It might be possible to convert it to 32-bit. I just wasn't sure if that was going to affect performance in the editor at all. or if it might be worthwhile having a separate 32-bit and 64-bit Windows release. Pedalbyte says using FSUAE now. Yep, too many layers. Let me get a message. Okay, so is the message is the message coming from Windows UAE, or is it coming from the Scorpion editor itself? Like, are you trying to run a Scorpion game, or are you trying to run the Scorpion editor and compile the game? Mixel says, I sometimes run Scorpion on an M1 in parallels and it works. Griffin asks, any plan to revamp the audio department in the foreseeable future? So support for more mod formats, bedding mixer capabilities, etc. No, so basically what I mentioned before is we're using the PHX library because of the features that has, in particular being able to play 4 channels at once and then mix in being able to mix in the sound effects on 4 channels all at once, using other libraries with other capabilities. It's not something that I would definitively rule out, but at the same time, it would need to be a library that already exists for Blitz Basic that I could just plug in and just get it all working, just the same way that the fixed library for Blitz Basic does. Okay, so Pedalbyte has said that after I compile it for Win64-bit, there's an executor on the Scorpion. Scorpion works, compiled game doesn't start. There's a game.exe and a game crunch.exe, assuming it's game.exe. Yeah, so either of those should work if you're running in an emulated Amiga. You should be able to just run game.exe and game crunch.exe. You wouldn't be able to run those, directly from Windows Explorer, for example. The only real difference is Game Crunch.exe is crunched with a program called Packer, I believe it is. But it basically makes the executable something like 1/3 of the size so that it will fit on floppy disks easier. But otherwise, either of those should work on any emulated Amiga.
Or was Pedalbyte talking about compiling the game specifically for Windows 64-bit instead of compiling an Amiga build?
Oh, okay, yeah. So that so Pedal, are you going running WinUE or running FSUA, or are you doing like a Windows 64-bit export? Okay, so yeah, maybe there's some issue that I hadn't expected with the Windows 64-bit export. I'll just give it a run. I'll just see what happens if. Oh, hang on. So that's just a random glitch that comes up every now and then. I'm just going to do a Windows 64-bit export from here just to make sure it should still be working. So this Windows 64-bit export, it basically dumps it out to an emulator setup. So we've just got a single batch file here, run game, we can run that. Hopefully it's not going to mess anything up, because I know it's going to open full screen. I don't know why, but it feels smoother running in WinUAE. Maybe it's just because we're running it in full screen, but it definitely doesn't feel like 25 frames, even though it definitely is.
I don't know, on the stream it looks pretty darn smooth, but I might not be noticing any kind of input lag or anything like that.
Well, so Pedalbyte says event viewer says well 64 emulation layer cannot be found. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it might be just some issue where you need to substitute the 64-bit version of, like, I think it's the 64-bit version of FSUAE I include with Scorpion. If you supplant it with the 32-bit one, you maybe might have some more success. Or if you're running it on a I guess the other thing you could do is so we do have an output for Mac. I think it just asks you, like after you do it, it tells you to put the whatever version you want. If it's the Intel one or the ARM one, you just put it in that folder. So I guess you could maybe if you go through that process. Oops, already got a folder called temp. Call it temp 2. If you go through that process, it says on a Mac, download the DMG for a desired FSUAE version, Intel or ARM, and extract into this folder. So you could maybe do that and then copy your your Scorpion game to your actual your real machine outside of the virtual machine, if that makes sense. Oh, good luck with that pedal bite. Griffin says, this is in regards to the audio. I'm aware, but it's surely not the peak we can attain on Amiga. So far as possible, I'd like to think of Scorpion as having as much cutting edge features as we can get. But I'm definitely not an expert on pretty much anything to do with audio. In fact, this recent thing with this music keyboard where we can this recent thing with the music keyboard where we can play it back at different frequencies. I had to get a lot of advice from John Shakiris on dynamic sound and dynamic frequency on Amiga. If someone else comes up with a library that offers some offers superior sound quality to what we've already got, I'd definitely consider looking at it.
Yeah, obviously the other big issue, everything's always a trade-off. So what's its memory footprint going to be, and what's it going to be? Remember, these are video games that we make. Audio is obviously important. But if it's at the cost of having a terrible frame rate or a drastically worse one or something,
Mm.
then it's not worth it.
Yeah, yeah, and uh, performance is very important to the Scorpion project, because if we um, yeah, if you couldn't make a game for your target Amiga, then if you couldn't make a game for an Amiga 500, then there's not really a reason to use Scorpion over putting the time into writing it all natively or using a different uh, game creation toolkit. But yeah, I mean, having said that, yeah, if there was a way that you could say use the default sound library, or if we're on AGA, then maybe we could do something fancier with more channels. If there was a way we could do that, that could be something that we could look into in future. Um, the other thing I probably should mention is that there is a I do plan to support CD music on the CD32. So if you're making a game for CD32, instead of using Pooler, you could have full Red Book audio. Um, but that hasn't been I put that in the feature poll every month, and nobody really asks for it. So it might be a little while before it. So some people do ask for it, but it's never one of the most popular features. So it might be a little while before it. The feature list is tidied up a bit more, and then that one becomes more asked for.
Yeah, it's definitely something I want, but I don't need it now, so that's why I never vote for that as the highest priority thing.
Hmm.
I always did wonder, do you know or anyone in the chat know, when you do play audio sound in the CD32, does it take one or two or channels or no channels or what? So like how many channels can be
Oh,
playing sound effects simultaneous to playing CD
yeah.
audio on a
So
CD32?
it takes no channels. It doesn't use Pooler at all.
Nice.
It's basically a I mean, it's basically a fire and forget. So you say,
Yeah.
play the CD music, and then while it's going, you can play whatever other sound effects or music you want. So that is quite a cool advantage of developing for the CD32 specifically, is having that freedom to have CD quality audio, and on top of that having four
All the
channels
whole
free for
channels. Yeah.
sound effects. And I think there were some games it might have been um, the CD32 release of one of the Defender of the Crown games used um, it used CD audio for speech. So you'd have like Robin Hood saying some lines, and that audio would be coming from the CD or from CD audio rather than from Paula.
You're right. I think I remember that in Defender of the Crown. Also, what are the famous Simon the Sorcerer? I think that was CD audio, wasn't it? Or was it
Ah,
just loading the audio from CD every time instead of playing directly as a CD music track?
no, I think that was sort of more like traditional wave files.
So it was
Um,
loading wave files from
hmm,
CD.
yeah,
Because I
yep,
do know I played it recently on an emulator, and there was definitely loading time before each uh, bit
hmm.
of dialogue.
That yeah, that doesn't surprise me too much. It's uh, so yeah, I mean, if you've got a couple of megs for Simon, well, for the speech file for Simon to say out a whole paragraph, that could take a second or two to load.
Right.
And it could freeze the entire gameplay while it's loading it.
Right.
Um, Mixel says, so Mixel's waiting on sound support. That sorry, not sound support, mouse support. That will probably come in. Like, I think that one is reasonably popular request. It's never been the most popular one, so it's never been done yet. But at some stage, we will add mouse support, so you can make like an Operation Wolf type game. Um,
Or like a click adventure, like Simon the Sorcerer.
yeah. uh, every now and then, someone asks, can we make an adventure game like Simon Sorcerer and Monkey Island? Can we make an adventure game in Scorpion? I pretty much always say, well, check out this thing called Grack, which I think was coded in Amos, but it's designed specifically as an adventure game engine, and I think there might have been one or two commercial releases with it. I would definitely like to get Scorpion to the point where, and on top of every other type of game it can handle a point and click adventure game, but there's a lot of complications in there. It's not just mouse support, but for instance, I don't really have a way of printing dialogue on the screen like is sort of common in those Sierra and LucasArts games. But also, pathfinding is another one that's a bit tricky because you usually, like in a game like Monkey Island, you'll be in a room that has all of these tables that you have to navigate around, and you can just click anywhere in the room and it will do some pathfinding to work out, well, I said to go to there, so I'm going to zigzag around all of these tables. I haven't really got anything like that in Scorpion yet, especially not for like, because these tables and things are not necessarily aligned to tiles; they're more like polygons, and so an adventure game normally has a polygon engine that works out pathfinding to get around complex shapes. Mixel says Grek and Groll are great, but I can't go back to making games with the Amiga. It's too fiddly.
I understand that. That's what keeps me away from. Well, I mean, obviously, also Scorpion can do what I want to do far faster and easier and better than Amos could. But I would not want to go back into running Amos on an emulated Amiga. And same thing with graphic programs. There's a program I use called ProMotion NG, which runs on Windows, which I use to do all my pixel art, even for Amiga games. And it would be a giant step back for work, comfort, and speed to try to go back to Deluxe Paint or Brilliance, even though they're great programs.
Mm. And yeah, I understand that. Like, I mean, I love the Amiga, but for productivity, it's really hard having a low resolution, um, and yeah, no, I mean, I suppose for art, it's going to be difficult. Like, Photoshop, it just makes it so easy to have lots of layers, um, or whatever other program. Well, pretty much any Windows art program used these days would have support for layers.
Right.
And and I mean, I use WinUE for compiling compiling Scorpion because it's made in Blitz Basic. But for actually programming it, I use a plugin that was made by the community for a Windows IDE called Atom. So I do pretty much 100% of my coding of the Scorpion engine in Windows, and then when I need to compile it and debug it, run it, then I enter a emulated Amiga.
Okay.
And yeah, Auto Retro mentioned mouse support might be good for a Marble Madness clone. Um, yeah, I hadn't really thought about that, but having some kind of mouse controller with acceleration, that might be interesting.
There's also a lot of modern games that are like platform gunner games where you
Hmm.
control the player's movement with like the WSAD or arrow keys,
Oh,
and you can aim 360 with the mouse
well,
as you're shooting stuff.
I mean, there were on the Amiga as well. I can't think of many other than Walker, which I'll put
Oh
on.
yeah, yeah, that's a famous one. There you go.
Um, oh, let's let's fast forward a bit. And yeah, so this is the kind of game I'd like to be able to add support for in Scorpion Engine. So you would use the joystick for moving around, or the keyboard for moving around, and then the mouse for aiming. Or even what would be really cool is if you had a kind of support for the CD32 pad, so you could use the buttons to aim.
Shoulders.
Oh yeah, so well, either the buttons or the D-pad to aim, and then the shoulder buttons move left and right.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I think it'll be very interesting when I finally do get mouse support running. Uh, we might see a few interesting games. Sort of like this. Oh well. So we've been streaming nearly 3 hours. It's probably a good place to end it for the day, unless anyone else has any sort of last minute questions or thoughts.
Not on my end. I'm excited to finish up those last remaining features that I mentioned I would do off stream. Um, but thanks very much for your help. It's been extremely productive. Hopefully, people found it entertaining and learned some stuff from it.
Mm. Um, yeah.
I
Well,
know I
thank
did.
you. Thank you for coming on the stream. It was a lot of fun,
Yep.
and
Thanks.
thank you for making this amazing looking Scorpion Engine game.
Thanks. Well, with your help, we'll get it amazing playing as well. It's definitely on the right track. I've got some really cool ideas, especially for the block now that deflects the shots at different angles. You can
Mm.
actually, even right now, when you get to the boss and there's that one enemy, if you don't kill that one rolling enemy right away, you can get under the boss, have the boss shoot at you, which will deflect the big shot at the little rolling guy and kill him in one hit. Pretty fun. So there's going to be I've got some cool ideas. Like imagine like you're in a corridor with these spots, like these turret things that shoot straight down at you if you stand under, and then there could be like a locked door that your sword isn't powerful enough to destroy, but if you deflect one of those shots into the door, it can break the door open and stuff like that. There's just a lot of really cool stuff
Mm.
that can be done with that game mechanic, and it's a lot of fun. And nothing like helping a player feel clever, like, ooh, I can redirect this enemy shot against the other enemy or against the same enemy. Like maybe I'll add a boss fight where there's reflective things in the corners, and you could end up getting a boss's shot hitting him. Like he could get him to hit himself by deflecting into one of those mirrors and stuff like that. Oh, you were supposed to not kill him, that ground enemy,
Oh.
so that you could deflect. Oh, and it does look like the boss is a little too low now, so it would be a little trickier to get under him and deflect the shot. But you get the idea. If
Mm.
you get under him and deflect the shot, you could deflect it right into that one walking guy.
Mm.
So that event code in boss spawn or something like that, or spawn boss that we turned off, that said set the position to y minus 20 or something like that. We'd have to turn that back on for it to be easy, but hey, you get the point across anyway. No need in prolonging this stream.
Mm. Um, well, yeah. So I guess it was a good thing we didn't delete that line. Then we just sort of left it commented out.
Yep.
And yeah, so I think well, we'll leave it here. I traditionally raid Amiga Live at the end of a stream because they're pretty much the only other people that are. Well, that channel is pretty much the only other one that's sort of Amiga related that's live right now. So, and there's 39 people there, so we're sending everyone into a big party. So, I will trigger the raid now, and I will see you all hopefully next time.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, yeah, catch us later.